Hey, what's up folks, GK here. At the end of this video, you're going to learn how I have deployed this sample website using Ansible automation. Alright folks, I'm going to divide this video into three parts. The first part I'm going to explain at a very high level what is Ansible, and by no means this video is to make you an expert in Ansible, but it will help you to get started. So you're going to learn that, the high level architecture of Ansible, how it works, and what are the use cases of Ansible. And in the second part, I'm going to go over again the difference between Ansible use cases and Terraform use cases. For example, if you have to use one software, what would you use? And this is often the common interview question that you might get as well when you are using Terraform or any other infrastructure automation tools. Why can't you just use Ansible? And I'm going to give you my perspective on that. And I'll quickly go over the installation of Ansible from the website, how to install it, what are the prerequisites. So in the third part, I'll go over the solution of provisioning the GC instance, installing the Apache web server, and installing my sample website. Now, if you are aware of Ansible, you can skip this part and dive right into the third section, and below is the timeline of going into that part. So at a very high level, for people who do not know what is Ansible, Ansible is a configuration management tool. So basically, the reason why we need Ansible is when you're trying to manage thousands of servers from one place, it's easier to use these kind of softwares to manage them sitting at one place and installing stuff into those servers. So that's the basic fundamental philosophy of a configuration management tool. Now you can do that using shell script or Python. Back in those days, that used to be the way people like system admins used to configure the softwares. But now when you're dealing with thousands of servers, it's impossible to go into each individual server and run shell script. Because one important thing that you should always remember when you're talking about Ansible is called idempotency. So Ansible maintains the state irrespective of what you do. It is idempotent. So this is an important, very important keyword. If you were asked about Ansible in interview, without this keyword, don't even proceed with explaining other things of Ansible. Now, at a very high level, the architecture of Ansible is you have control node where your Ansible is actually installed. The software is installed here on this node, and you have managed nodes where you're going to connect to that managed node over SSH. This is important because you're not going to install any agent in those nodes, and that's why often Ansible is called as agentless configuration management tool when compared to Puppet or Chef, because you have to have agents for the communication between the control nodes and the managed nodes. But in this case, you don't have to do that. The communication is over SSH, and you will write bunch of tasks. So we're going to see in my example as well what I have written. So these tasks define what you're going to do on the nodes. And then you have host file that's going to define on which node you're going to install the software. So you can either define the group of hosts, or you can have dynamic hosts, and you can create all these tasks, bunch of tasks into a file called playbook. So this is what we have done. This is what I have done. I'm going to show you that how I have done it. But basically, you're going to put all the tasks in a playbook and you're going to run the playbook. That's a introduction about Ansible, high level architecture. What are the things that you have to understand from the Ansible perspective? It's a very simple tool. It's nothing complicated. Its installation is very straightforward. Now the use cases, you might have this question in your mind, like if I'm using Ansible, why I have to use Terraform, or why I have to use a CloudFormation template in AWS, or deployment manager in GCE. So that's where fundamentally one thing that you have to understand is Ansible is very good with the configuration management tasks. Meaning, if you want to install or configure or deploy patches, so those are the common use cases that people use Ansible for, like upgrading the software in the node servers, or installing the softwares in the nodes, making sure the same version of the software is installed across the servers, or installing the patches. So any such use cases, Ansible does very good job, but Ansible doesn't maintain the state. So if you watched my Terraform video, you know that Terraform maintains the state. For example, let's say I use Terraform to provision bunch of GCE services, right? I can do Terraform, I can go back to the previous state by rolling back. I don't have to worry about anything else, because Terraform specifically maintains the state of your infrastructure, but Ansible doesn't do that. Let's say I use Ansible to provision services in Google Cloud or in AWS. You have to explicitly again write a playbook to delete those services. So that's the tough thing in Ansible. So the best approach, I'm gonna give you two very good articles of what HashiCorp team has mentioned as well, because Terraform is from HashiCorp. So the best way is to have Terraform as well as Ansible used together. Like Terraform will provision the servers or provision the infrastructure as an infrastructure as a code, and then Ansible is used to do the configuration management. So that's the best way to achieve better automation in the cloud. Now, having said that, so let's go to the demo. I have my Ubuntu here, and before I go into the demo, like I've said, I have already installed Ansible on my Ubuntu. But if you're not aware of installation steps are very easy, and usually most of the time you might be using RHEL or CentOS. So for that, it's yum install. The only thing that you have to make sure is that you have Python 2.7 or above, or Python 3.5 or above. So these one of this has to be satisfied. And then obviously the communication is over SSH. You don't have to do anything else beyond making sure that the servers are able to communicate to each other over SSH. So that's about the installation part. Now, after the Ansible is installed, when you are working with Google Cloud, there are specific requirements with respect to Google Cloud. So the basic requirement is, again, the prerequisite here is you have to do pip install of requests and Google Auth. As we have discussed in my diagram, the control node has to talk to the nodes, right? I mean the managed nodes. So as you all know, I think by now you must be aware of the service accounts, how to use service accounts, or else you can go back to my previous videos and understand what is service account. But the mode of communication between the control node and the managed nodes is using service account. So I'm going to go through that as well and quickly create a service. I'll show you how to create a service account, but I have already created for this demo. I'll show you where to create it. Download the JSON file. So that's the important thing. So you have a service account with the right permissions to provision a GC instance if you are using Ansible to create GC instances, or in general if you want to create a GCS bucket, then you would have to give those permissions. But in general, you will make sure that the service account that you're using from the Ansible node, or rather the control node, will have necessary permissions to do all the necessary operations on your Google Cloud. After you create the service account and download the JSON file, you're going to use the JSON file in the Ansible playbook. So now I'm going to go over the Ansible playbook which I have created, so you will understand what I have done and how I have used it. Because one thing that bugged me a lot, I mean, I have had almost spent 4 hours or 5 hours on this specific example that was given on the website, was because they are creating the network to create the GC instance, but in my demo I wanted to use the default account, rather default network, and I finally somehow did that by going through the documentation and all. So you don't have to worry about that, because I have put the code in my Git and I'm going to share the links as well. So you should be able to easily create GC instance with the playbook that I have created. All right, so having said that, now you are aware of installation of Ansible. Do that and let me know in the comment section if you have any questions related to that, or configuring Ansible in your control node. Once you have your control node ready, so go to my GitHub page and go to the Ansible scripts, and here you're going to see the main.yaml file. So this is the Ansible playbook. Okay, as I was telling before, so these are bunch of tasks, so these are bunch of tasks here, and the name is just a label. Here I'm saying it like create compute engine instances, and host is localhost, because I'm not specifically running this on specific target, so it's going to be default localhost. And these are all the variables that I've used. For example, GCP project, you can put any name here, but this is the project name, and the cred kind is the service account, right? So here I'm using service account as a mode of communication, and the JSON file for the cred file, the zone, machine type, and the image. Once the variables are set, these are all the tasks. The first task, I'm creating an IP address, for instance, and in the name of the IP address, the region, the project, service account file. And the second task is I'm bringing up the instance in the zone. So I'm going to create the instance here, and I'm going to attach the IP address that I have created in my previous task. So because I'm registering the IP address in a variable, and I am assigning that variable here for the NAT IP, so I'm going to get the public IP address, right? So that's those two are the tasks, and the disk is already mentioned here. For the disk here, I'm just using the source image, and it's going to have an auto delete true, so that once the instance is deleted, the disk is also deleted. You can set it to false if you want, but again the disk will be, so you have to pay money for that. Now the other important section is tags. Tags are the firewall tags that we are setting here. Because I'm installing Apache web server, I have to make sure that the service is available over HTTP or HTTPS. In this case HTTP is enough, because I'm not using 443, I'm going to use 80 port, but still I have given HTTP server and HTTPS server. So this is important to enable the firewall rules for the GC instance. The post tasks is I'm going to wait for the instance to be up and running, so that I can communicate to the instance from the control node over SSH. Sometimes it takes a lot of time, so I have modified the timeout to 100, because in my case I got a lot of issues as it was not able to communicate in specific time, like 60 or 40 was the default time, but I have increased to 100. And then finally I'm saving the IP address, and I'm also creating a group of, I'm saving it in a group. So Ansible has a concept of group, where you can have, like, if I have created 2 or 3 instances here or 5 instances here, you can put all of them in a group, and then you can use that group of IP addresses, because so this is going to be stored in the memory during this execution of this playbook. So you can use those group IP addresses, and you can execute installation of software on the group of servers together. So that's the advantage of creating a group. The most important part, after everything is done, basically after the instance is created, I'm going to install Apache and deploy my custom HTML page. And if you are familiar with my Kubernetes videos, I have used the same HTML page. So I'm going to install Apache on the Ubuntu GC instance, and I'm going to copy my HTML page and put it there. The host is something that we are going to refer from the previous post task section, and become method, yes, because you have to do certain operations as obviously root user. So I'm going to do it using sudo. In the roles part, so what are roles? In Ansible you can define multiple roles. For example, you want to do certain operations in a web environment, or you want to do certain operations in a prod environment or non-prod environment. So you can create prod, non-prod, or dev, multiple roles together, and then you can define those roles. So here the role which I've defined is a simple web. So for that we have to create roles / simple web. So this is the directory structure that it expects. So when you say roles simple web, the playbook will look for this directory structure. So make sure of that. And inside that, so there are multiple folders. Again, this is the folder structure that Ansible follows. and you have to follow the same way. So inside that you have tasks again. Inside task you have the main.yaml file. So main.yaml file again is the main tasks of for that role. So main set of tasks for that playbook for that role, right? So in this main.yaml file, first thing I'm installing the basic dependencies to install Apache on Ubuntu. So this is a dependency. This is a Python apt which is required, and then I'm installing install Apache on the instance. This is the name. As I was mentioning before, the module is apt, because in Ubuntu you use apt-get. In let's say you want to do the same thing in RHEL, you would use yum as a module, and the name is Apache 2 is the software name. Update cache is equal to yes, and state is equal to present, meaning that so for all the servers that I'm going to run this playbook, in all those servers you would make sure that the Apache is installed. So that's the state which is say present. If I say here as absent, then it's going to uninstall Apache 2 on all the servers where we are going to execute this role. And this is copy my index.html. So I'm going to copy the source index.html, which I'm going to show you, which is existing in the files directory structure, and the destination is where is www.html, which is obviously the default document root for Apache web server. And then I'm going to keep the services started, so that the service is started after everything is done. Now with respect to the files, so if you go to the file section, you will see my index.html. So this is the sample index.html file that we have in the files. At any point of time, if you have any questions on the modules, you can always look for the modules page. I'm going to paste this link in the description. So you have with reference to all the modules like apt, how to use apt, how to use yum, how to use command. Let's say you want to create a file, a sample file on the GC instance, how to do that. So you can do all those things. You can clearly look for those information in this documentation of Ansible, which is very good. Now each cloud service provider have their own modules, so which is what we are currently going through. Like if Azure has Azure modules and Google has Google modules. So here you can see the GC instant template, GC image. You can, this is the module for GCE. If I go to the GCE module, you can see the important parameters that you have to pass to the playbook, and they also have an example here. All right, now let's go to my Ubuntu, and like I've said, Ansible is already installed. I can show you guys by doing Ansible version, which is 2.9. This is the latest one that I've installed, I think yesterday or day before yesterday. And I also got the files that I have showed you in the GitHub repo. You can do git clone and you can use the same files. Now how you're going to execute Ansible is you're going to say Ansible -playbook. So because I'm executing a playbook, I'm running a playbook, right? So I'm not running a Ansible ad hoc command. So if I want to run an ad hoc command, I can do Ansible and -m for module. I can say shell or something like that, and then I have to mention the host where I'm going to execute. So I can do all that stuff here, but I'm not going to do that now here because I'm going to execute the playbook. So as we were looking at the playbook when I was going through the GitHub page, so this is the playbook I have. The control node, which is this Ubuntu machine, is going to communicate to my GC instance that we're going to create in the Google Cloud using OS login, and that's a very important concept, and it's recommended that way to communicate instead of putting the keys and stuff. If you have any questions on that, feel free to go back to my OS login video. I've shown you how to use service accounts, OS login and stuff. So but basically I have created a service account. So by the way, I haven't covered that part. Let me quickly go through the service account. So for this, I have created an Ansible service account. separately, which is called Ansible admin. I have given pretty much the highest privileges for this project editor because I wanted to use this to execute a lot of stuff beyond just GC instances. So I've given that permission and also made this service account have the permission of the OS login thing that is required. I'm going to show you that real quick. The service account, compute OS login, the compute OS login admin, and the service account user. So these two are the important. Again, I have very well described that in my previous video for OS login. Highly recommend watching that. But these two are important to make the service account as a user to communicate from Ansible control node to the managed nodes. Going back now, if I do gcloud config list real quick, you would see what is the account that is currently set, which is going to be my Ansible service account, and I also activated the service account, so I have the username from that. So I'm going to finally run this playbook, Ansible playbook main.yaml, which is the main.yaml file, and here if you observe, I'm executing this as a user, service account user, meaning after it creates the GC instance, it's going to communicate to the node using the service account, which has the privileges of whatever I have shown you here, and then it's going to execute the tasks. Like the tasks are creating a web server and installing the playbook, copying the index.html and stuff. So let's run it now. This is the moment of truth. You can see the tasks label that I have put here. It's creating an IP address, for instance. It's already there, then it will say OK. If it is not there, then it would say changed. So as in when this is happening, we can go here to the compute engine section, and you can see the server is coming up, the instance is coming up, and right now it is waiting for SSH for the instance. So okay, save host data for the first zone, good. And now it is trying to install Apache on the instances. It installed the Apache and it also copied index.html file. You can see OK 5 and change 3, and that's pretty much it. So now if you want to verify that, you can go to the public IP address and copy and open incognito. That's it. We have installed the Apache web server, copied my index.html, and there you go, my website is up and running. I hope you like this video. I hope you have now understanding of Ansible and you can try a bunch of things. And if you want to start with a simple task, maybe create a file after you provision GC instance on Google Cloud, and let me know how that went, and let me know if you have any questions on this. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I thank you so much for voting for this task in my poll, and I appreciate that you are giving me good feedback on my videos. I will come back with more such awesome videos, and if you don't want to miss them, click on subscribe and do like this video and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.